I quite often mention, when you do the right thing, good things happen to you. They may not happen immediately, they may happen 5 years later, but I just think that we're just nice guys by nature. I don't have any other way to describe it. And good things happen to good people. So yes, we paid $1 million worth of refunds after paying $1 million worth of flights to Air Australia. So we were $2 million out of pocket for a startup, called Scoopon in the early days. But at least I could sleep well at night,
Hi everyone, welcome to episode 135 of the Startup Playbook podcast. I'm your host Rohit Bhargava, and each week I interview successful founders, investors, and subject matter experts on how they got started, the strategies they use to succeed, and their advice to current and future entrepreneurs. This week I went back to doing in-person interviews and was delighted to be sitting down with Gabby Leibovich, the co-founder of the Catch Group, for this episode. Gabby and his brother Hezi are two of Australia's leading e-commerce entrepreneurs. In October 2006, they launched Catch of the Day, a website that provides exclusive deals on its platform every single day. By 2010, they had become Australia's most visited online shopping site, and in August 2019 had been acquired by Wesfarmers for $230 million. Alongside Catch, they'd also launched Scoopon in 2010, which was then acquired by the Lux Group in 2017. And after launching EatNow in 2012 and merging with Menulog in 2015, they were then acquired by UK-based Just Eat for a whopping $855 million just a few months later. This interview is jam-packed full of information and insights. Some of the things that Gabby and I discussed include how to build a culture that attracts and retains talent, the story behind Scoopon's decision to offer $1 million in refunds after the collapse of an airline, balancing the trade-offs when making key decisions as a leader, how 1 + 1 = 3 when working with the right partners, and my personal favorite, a deep dive into all things Liverpool, specifically how to stop kissing frogs by having great leadership in place. Without further ado, here is my interview with Gabby Leibovich. Hi Gabby, welcome to the Startup Playbook podcast, and thanks so much for taking the time to be on the show today.
Yeah, great to be here with you, Rohit. I've done quite a few podcasts lately. They were all on Zoom, so I'm really happy to see someone face to face.
Likewise. And just getting used to doing them in person again for me. But Gabby, for those people who may not be as familiar with you or your background, do you want to share a little bit about your story and what got you here today?
Okay, Gabby Leibovich, together with my brother Hezi, we are known as the co-founders of a bunch of digital businesses that we've built over the last 13 years, and that's why we launched a book recently called Catch of the Decade. The word catch comes from our first business called Catch of the Day that we launched in 2006. And it became one of Australia's leading sites, leading e-commerce sites that got sold to Wesfarmers in August of 2019. Along that decade, we built other businesses in various verticals. Those businesses included Scoopon that we launched in 2010, Grocery Run, Mumgo, Catch of the Day ended up rebranding in 2017 to catch.com.au, and we also added the marketplace, and in that year we also merged our business Scoopon with a travel market leader called Luxury Escapes. I forgot one. In the book we talk about it as our princess, and that's a business that we've built called EatNow, which was a leader in food delivery that ended up merging with Menulog in 2015 and then being sold for shitloads of money to a company from England called Just Eat.
Yeah. Very cool. And obviously, I think I mentioned this on socials, just spent the entire weekend just digging into that book, and such a fascinating story. One of the themes that comes out over and over again is Hutzpah. I said this wrong for those people that are listening when we first had a dry run of this, but there's a story that you mentioned in the book in terms of you getting married at the halftime of a soccer game, and it's something that was always your sort of dream to do. And most people have their own sort of version of what that dream looks like, but they never really take any action to do that. And obviously, again, as I mentioned, it's a theme that kind of is very evident in yourself and your brother, and obviously a lot of the people that came and worked for you. Do you want to share, for the benefit of our listeners, the story behind your wedding at the halftime of a soccer game, and also where this trait comes from?
So thank you, Rohit, for starting with soccer. Together with retail, it's my favorite or second favorite topic of conversation. So we can talk about that for the whole hour if you wish. But yes, I did get married in 2002 on a soccer field at Marvel Stadium. The match that took place was a friendly match between Leeds United from England and Colo-Colo from Chile. I remember just sending the organizers an email and saying, hi, I'm a Leeds supporter, which is not true. I'm actually a Liverpool supporter that jumped at the opportunity. And I said, hey, my dream is to get married on a soccer field. Why don't you organize me a wedding at halftime? And luckily for me, they had no halftime entertainment plans, and we became their halftime entertainment. So talking about Hutzpah, this wasn't, the best example of it. This was just trying your luck. And, the moral of the story here, and we do mention it in the book, is that sometimes in life, all you have to do is ask. As Michael Jordan said, you miss all the shots that you don't take. And, we're quite happy to try and take as many shots as we can. In the book, we talk about another message, and the message is sometimes in life you need to kiss a few frogs in order to find your princess, and we've been doing it all along. We discuss in these books about many of our failures, and we have failed many times, and but we've also succeeded so in so many ways. So you got to try different things. The concept of chutzpah is an Israeli word that really appears in the English dictionary, one of very few. I really struggle to explain to non-Israelis what it actually means. It's a mix of arrogance and going for it and trying hard and bending rules and going in through the third door when the front door is closed. And it's a common thing. Israelis really understand what chutzpah is, and it feels like it's a country with 9 million people, and everyone has that urge to succeed. So for no apparent reason, now it is being referred to as the startup nation. There's so many amazing startups that come from Israel because we just don't like to accept the status quo, and we're all very good at asking ourselves the question, how can we do this better?
Speaking of kissing a few frogs, we've just been speaking before we turned on the microphone for the last 10 minutes about Liverpool. We have this shared obsession, fanaticism, some might call it, for the club. And we were just talking about how, Liverpool has been kissing a few frogs for the last few years with managers, with their squad, and it's incredible what they've turned around and built. The very first thing that you mentioned in the book, is you started Catch, I think in your mid-30s.
Yeah, I was 36.
But before that, you had, as you mentioned in the book, a number of shitty businesses that helped get you on the path. Yeah. One thing that, obviously in the book, you cover in detail a lot of your career. One thing you don't mention is the fax doctor, which, Adir Schiffman, who was someone that we first connected with, he told me that he used to buy fax machines back in the day, and whenever they broke down, he would go to the fax doctor, and it turned out that it was your business.
No. So Adir got that a little bit wrong. So back when I was 21, 2, 3, 4, 5, around that period, I ran a business in Bentley, not far from where the Catch offices are right now, and the business was called the Communication Clinic. The Communication Clinic was a repair center for faxes, for cordless phones, for mobile phones, and various other communication equipment. Funnily enough, a company called the Fax Doctor was our main competitor. He was based in Doncaster. So Adir got that a little bit wrong, but he's on the right path.
So you mentioned Panasales as another business that you were involved in as well. And Adir mentioned that, at that time, you had built up a bit of a reputation in that business. There was a bit of a niche that was being built up. But again, it wasn't necessarily didn't turn into Catch or some of the other businesses that you've gone on to build. And, I'm sure that this is a journey that a lot of people that are listening to the show have been through themselves, have gone through the ringer of multiple businesses that potentially haven't gone on to be their version of Catch. What are some of the lessons that you sort of took through that period that helped you build Catch? And I guess what was different about Catch that made it stand out and work in a way that the others didn't?
Wow, that is a very hard question. You can truly write a whole book
Your
about
second
that.
book.
Yeah, simply because it's not one thing and it's not two and it's not even three things. A lot of it is about the execution, you know. For example, when we launched Scoopon, about 80 different companies around Melbourne launched the same business model that we all try to imitate. A successful company from the US called Groupon that everyone should know what they do. But today, there's only two players in that market. It's really Scoopon that ended merging up with Kudo and Groupon themselves. And what's the reason for it? It's those 1,000 decisions that need to be made every single day in a startup that really make that difference between success and failure. And yes, in the book, we touch on a number of them. The first one that comes to mind is the line, it's all about the people. It's about surrounding yourself with really smart people that go to work with you. We call them intrapreneurs. They care about the business, they care about the mission, and they want to succeed. We talk about building a tremendous culture, and you know, before we turned on the microphone, we talked about the manager of Liverpool, a German guy called Klopp, who's doing some magical things there because Liverpool has been kissing frogs for a couple of decades and couldn't advance, and suddenly they changed the leadership. And they are again the best team in the world, like they used to be in the late 80s. What both me and Rohit, yourself, love about the new coach is that he's such a lovable, friendly guy, and you feel like you want to go to war with him. And I think that's the kind of culture that we managed to build at Catch. Our employees stuck with us throughout the whole journey. And I knew that throughout that whole journey, they were getting job offers from everyone out there. People loved employing Catch employees. We were known to be the best in the industry in any category, but no one was interested in leaving. And it got to a point of being way past the remuneration. People just loved being part of a great mission and a great team. People that enjoy coming to work will always give you 110%. They'll care about the business. They're not going to look at their watch to see that it's 5 o'clock and they need to go home. And we've managed to build a truly happy place that was achieving goals. And a lot of people saw it as their destination and their home. And they knew that it would lead to bigger and better things. And it truly did for many of them.
Yeah, I know that Catch became known to be one of the best places to work. In the book you talk about the slide that you built, which which was obviously brought you great PR and was a great way of introducing people who maybe weren't familiar with that area as a selling point. But I guess taking a step back to the earlier days of Catch and trying to convince the best people to join your company. Someone else I spoke to for this podcast that you introduced me to was Guy Pollack, who I think went on to was the head buyer for Catch for a very long time.
Head of buying. So when we left Catch, I mean, the 60 growing team of buyers, assistant buyers and merchandisers were reporting to him. So to me, he was Mr. Catch once we left. It was all about buying. That's what this business is.
Absolutely. When I spoke to him, he mentioned that he joined Catch very early on, and at that time he was running his own business, I believe, at that time as well. He said he had a shop at a inside one of the
vacuum cleaner cells.
At that very early stage, when you don't have the slides, you don't have the brand, you don't have all of those other things, how do you convince the best people to come in and join you?
Look, the truth is, I don't think that we had the best people at the time. We had great people. I'll tell you a little joke. I once invited a magician to my house and for one of my daughter's birthday, and he introduced himself as, "Hi, I'm Luigi Zucchini and I'm the best magician in my price range." And the kids didn't understand the jokes, but that joke was aimed at the parents at the birthday. And it's one of those jokes that I will never forget because it's so true. He's not the best magician in the world. He's just the best magician that I was willing to pay for a birthday. And going back to the early days, when you start, and when we started with our team of 6, 7 that grew to 20, we hired the best people we could find that will accept the salary of call it $60,000 a year. Many of them were immigrants. Many of them were young, 20 and 21-year-olds that were looking for a job. I think that we got very, very lucky with the caliber of people that we managed to hire, because those people stuck with us for a decade or more. For example, our first employee was an immigrant from India called Vijay Bala. And the reason he got hired, because he knew how to operate the computers, and that was his job. And he brought with him, another guy that just landed in the country called Ferry, and he was an immigrant from Malaysia. And would you believe that Ferry is still working at Catch today after 14 years? Vijay stuck with us for 11 years. Today, Vijay works for Amazon in Seattle. So he left us for Amazon because his wife got a job in the USA. I'm just using these two as an example of amazing people. We talk in the early days of launching Catch that none of us had any titles in year 1 or 2. We all did anything that was required. And I remember if a container just arrived from China, I remember it was like 40 degrees. We had to take out 1,400 vacuum cleaners out of the container. We all take our shirts off, we jump in, and we just unload the container. And if there's too many emails left at the end of the day, then we all answer emails, customer service. And if the one warehouse guy that we had couldn't handle today's orders, then we all became warehouse people. I'm an expert at operating that sticky tape gun and everything else. So we were truly a very strong team, and it just kept on growing.
I listened back to an interview of yours from 5 years ago where you mentioned that culture was something that you felt was really important, but not necessarily something that was shared by some other team members or those sorts of things as well. What gave you that important place that culture plays within an organization? And when you think about sort of implementing that as well, culture can be such a loose term.
Yeah,
everyone sort of throws around culture and the type of culture that they want to build. How do you think about sort of implementing and instilling that within the people that join, especially new people when you're starting to build a company up from scratch?
Look, we can talk about later about the difference between myself and my brother, and it's quite evident that the culture was driven by myself. My brother is a genius in many other ways, but this is something that he left for me to take care of. And if I have to pick one thing, it's lead by example. And I was always on the floor. I'm a very friendly person. I'm a very huggy person. I like to show people when I love them and I care about them, and you go to work together. And as I mentioned earlier, when they see the CEO and the founder of the business taking their shirt off and unloading a container and driving around and starting early and finishing late, then you truly lead by example. We talk about entrepreneurs in the book later on, and if you have 15 people like yourself in a team of 200, and each one of them is in charge of their division, you don't have to worry about it that much, because you know that those leaders will take care of that division. In the last 2 years in the business, I can tell you that it was just way too large by then. And myself and my brother didn't really have any titles by then. We weren't in charge of any divisions, but all I had to do is speak to the team leaders, whether it's the head of customer service or the head of IT or the head of design or the head of logistics, in order to know what's going on in the business. But they themselves have built themselves to a position of power, but also a position of care and love towards their employees. And we just knew that when we depart the business, this will continue as long as these leaders will stay in the business, taking on the learnings that they've learned over the last decade. Talking about culture is the part that I found the hardest, because it's something that's so hard to put into words. We spent about 10 pages in the book trying to touch on culture, talking about happy employees, happy place, the carrot and the stick mentality, etc. But it's just something that has to come from within you, but it always starts at the top.
Always starts at the top, and I think, as you just mentioned, always starts with the actions. I think you mentioned this in the book, like culture is, things can be really happy when things are going really well. It's when things get really challenging that push you, that makes things really difficult. I thought an amazing example of this was when I'm forgetting the name. Is it Air Australia went bankrupt?
Yeah.
And you essentially had $1 million worth of orders that had gone through that you weren't directly essentially liable for, but you decided to take that on yourselves and do that. Again, do you want to kind of, for the benefit of our listeners, kind of talk us through that process of, what were some of the discussions? In the end, you said the decision was fairly straightforward, but what were some of the discussions that were taking place internally when you decided that you were going to refund $1 million?
Look, it was sometime in 2013 we wake up one morning to find out that Air Australia went into receivership. At the time, we sold about 4,000 deals from Australia to Phuket. Each customer paid us, I think, $700 for flight and some basic accommodation. And at the time of the airline going into receivership, about half of the buyers redeemed their orders and the other half have not. So we had 2,000 people that basically paid us, I think it was $700, that expected to get a holiday in return. All other airlines would basically refer you to your insurance company, and the insurance company will refer you to that little clause that said, if a company goes into receivership, we are not liable to pay you anything. But Scoopon at the time was about 1.5 to 2 years old, and it was a very tough decision. Luckily enough, Catch was very profitable by then. We had a tremendous profitable year in 2012, and we talk about in the book the concept of just doing the right thing, and we didn't consider the other option of not doing the right thing by the consumer, and I suppose it pays off. And I quite often mention, when you do the right thing, good things happen to you. They may not happen immediately, they may happen 5 years later, but I just think that we're just nice guys by nature. I don't have any other way to describe it, and good things happen to good people. So yes, we paid $1 million worth of refunds after paying $1 million worth of flights to Air Australia. So we were $2 million out of pocket for a startup, called Scoopon in the early days. But at least I could sleep well at night,
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can't part-time do the right thing.
Yeah.
And I think, a lot of the things with culture come down to what are things that you do consistently on an ongoing basis over a long time, not just what you choose to do when things are convenient.
And by the way, when people always look at you, whether it's the media, your suppliers, your customers, your friends, not doing the right thing can really kill your reputation. And at the end of the day, all we have in our life is our reputation that we carry forward. And it's all about relationships. And people like to do business with people that they like and people that they trust. And that builds a lot of trust.
So, obviously we've spoken a little bit about culture. And so I don't know if I've told you this, but my day job is working with Amazon in their startup team at AWS.
Okay, thank you, Rohit. It was nice talking to you. I have to leave.
Okay, this is just me trying to get information from you. But one of the things that Amazon's known for is the 14 leadership principles that we have, and one of the things that we sort of often talk about is the balance between them, and sometimes they intentionally kind of oppose in different directions. One of the things that you mentioned in the book, and one thing that Guy mentioned when I spoke to him, was the idea behind a good idea at midnight implemented by midday, which is, having that bias for action and really going out and focusing on implementing something. One thing that I thought that was really interesting that he mentioned was that as a result, you didn't really dive in deep before going in and taking actions. And, whenever we kind of talk about making decisions or setting culture, there's always a counterbalance between the things that you say, these are the things that we prioritize, and these are the things that, as a result, we let go of or understand that this is a byproduct of that happening. How do you sort of think about trade-offs when you're making decisions really quickly in terms of different businesses to launch or kind of various things as a leader when you have all of these different variables at play? How do you sort of remain consistent and try and make the right decisions through that process?
Look, a lot of things are running through my mind right now, but the first thing that runs through my mind is the word gut feeling, and throughout the years, and very differently to the way that Amazon operates, and even differently to the way that Kogan claims to be operating, we have been relying on this thing called gut feeling all along. But what is it really? I've just turned 50 this year. My gut feeling is everything that I have in my little brain. Every little article that I've ever read, every person that I met, every book that I've said, every breath you take, I'll be watching you. And that's your gut feeling. So right now, as I looked at my phone, 3 people sent me various articles. We all forward to each other various articles, and we all get ourselves educated every single day about our niche of operation. And I think that after doing it for a long, long time, we are experts in our niche simply because we feel like we've seen it most, or we've seen more than most. And I think that's what gut feeling is. We talk in the book about the concept of luck, and what's luck. We talk that luck is composed of 3 different components. One of them is location, making sure that you are there in the first place. Me and you are at a certain location right now, and good things will happen from this association. We don't know what that thing is, but you'll probably recommend me to look at a certain company in a month because they're looking for investment, and I'll be very happy by that. The other part of luck is timing, and timing is of course very important. We got our timing right quite a few times, and we got our timing wrong at least once in the time that we sold our business, and due to COVID we sold it just 1 year too early. And the third part of luck is, as I mentioned earlier, it's really education. Yeah, we get approached by lots and lots of investors and startups, on a regular basis to invest in their companies. And at the end, you need to make a decision within a 5-minute chat, most likely. Are you interested or are you not interested? Is this the kind of person I want to do business with or not? Are they trying to solve an existingly large problems that require solving? Will they be able to do it? All these decisions need to be made quite quickly. And I suppose you are a mix of all those parameters and circumstances mixed together.
Yeah. Again, really curious to know from your perspective of, you're not just trying to build up one company. You had, as you mentioned, Catch, Scoopon, various different businesses that you were involved in as an organization under the Catch Group. How did you think about resource allocation in terms of people, in terms of skills, in terms of trying to get things off the ground? When was the right time that you said, we need to kind of hold back on this and this needs to kind of prove itself, versus what were those kind of tipping points for you that said, actually, we should go all in? What was there, how did you make those decisions?
Look, interesting. I mean, the first business that we've built was Scoopon. The reason we launched it is because we saw Groupon launching in the USA, and we just asked ourselves the question of, wow, we could actually do this, because Groupon is very similar to Catch of the day at the time. Catch was selling discounted large volume on products, and Groupon came up with the same model for restaurant, massages, and events. And as the line in the book goes, my brother showed me the concept of Groupon, and my reply to him was, wow, we've seen a lot of shit lately, but this one is a really good one. Let's do it. In our business, we refer to this concept of toolbox. What was the toolbox is everything that we had built already under the Catch of the Day banner that we could reuse and reallocate to build vertical businesses. And one of the main reasons that Scoopon has succeeded is because we had a very large database of consumers that loved us and trusted us online, and we were able to reach out to them and let them know about our second business that we have launched. At the same time, the other parts of that toolbox were the teams. So we had an amazing IT team that was able to build new websites, an amazing customer service team, logistics, and so on. And with that toolbox, we again built a number of businesses vertically. Why did we do it? I don't know. I think we're just entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs enjoy building. And on the cover of the book, there's a big sign that says Catch of the Day, building things since 2006. And I think that's what we do. We build things. if I'm not mistaken, the last line in the book says the following: Gabby and Hezi love solving problems, and problems will always be around. And how interesting it is right now, Rohit, that we are exiting COVID. And as they say, chaos and disruption lead to opportunity, and you just feel like 2021 will be the best time ever to invest in a business, the best time ever to launch a business, and everything is around that, that space of us that we've been playing it for the long time, which is digital. And not just e-commerce, also working from home and education and services and travel and so much more. So I'm really excited for the coming year.
Speaking of investing, again, one of the things that you mentioned in the book, and funnily enough, something that David Shane and I spoke about on the show as well, was he missed out on the opportunity to invest in Nick from Afterpay early on, something that you sort of touched on as well. I guess, what were some of the lessons for you from that? Or, when you sort of think about that, opportunities like that potentially were missed, or things that you decided to go in on, what are learnings that you've kind of taken in terms of moving forward, in terms of how you look at new opportunities that may arise in the future?
Look, one of the main reasons we didn't invest in Afterpay is a line that we mentioned a few times in the book. We mentioned those lines when it comes to making errors or losing focus, and the line is stick to what you know best. And the truth is, both myself and my brother don't understand the fintech space. And we reached out to experts to maybe help us understand and guide us. But again, Corona happens once in 100 years, and I think companies like Afterpay will be launched in Australia probably once in 100 years. So yes, we missed out on investing at Afterpay when this 26-year-old guy walked into our office and told us that he's building a product that will need to compete against Visa and MasterCard and PayPal. What are the chances of their building, what it is today, a $30 billion company? So congratulations to Nick and Anthony. They've done a tremendous job. And yes, we are quite happy, or quite proud, not happy, to be there in the early days. But yes, we said no to Nick. Thank you, but no. We would invest our money elsewhere. My best advice to most startup founders and investors is stick to what you know best. Because if you try and get into areas that you don't, that's where you will make mistakes. And quite a few people reach out to us on a regular basis trying to discuss with us an idea that they have about a niche that they do not understand whatsoever. And chances are the person that would solve that problem is a person that really understands that space, has been working in it for a decade or so, and really knows the pain points, the problems, and hopefully the solution going forward. We've tried a number of times to get into areas that we don't understand. We detail them in the book. One of them is our investment in a wine company called Vino Mofo, that because we don't understand wine and because we lost focus by doing too many things at the same time, that business is no longer part of the group. The other one that we failed for exactly the same reason was a company called Pumpkin Patch.
I was actually just about to ask you about that.
In the space of apparel, we did the same mistake exactly in 2017. We were so busy doing a million other things, building a travel site, rebranding Catch, adding a marketplace, but we couldn't resist because we are entrepreneurs, and we bought the rights for this business called Pumpkin Patch. But we neglected to understand that it's a very different kind of retailing to what we were used to, whereby Pumpkin Patch required us to go to China, design apparel for kids, seasonality, and various other concepts and aspects that we have never dealt with before. And we realized that quite quickly throughout the journey, and I'm very happy to say that we decided not to chase that rabbit down the hole and give up on the whole project. So the moral here is stick to what you know best, and I think it will pay off in the long run.
Yeah, Justin was actually guest number 3 on this podcast 4 years ago, and he kind of obviously spoke about that. And again, you kind of mentioned this in the book that, obviously Justin and his co-founders were very, very deeply passionate about the space and had built up that community, and they approached you in terms of kind of buying you out. I assumed the Pumpkin Patch acquisition was a little bit different. And as Guy kind of mentioned, he said that it was a distraction rather than necessarily a stepping stone. What does that process look like in terms of coming to that realization of, we thought that it might be X and it might help us get to what we wanted? What does that process look like for you to determine actually maybe it's not the right move and we need to make a decision to cut our losses? Well, not cut our losses, but get out.
So look, Pumpkin Patch was quite easy. Again, we were doing so well in that year. We were working on a number of projects, and I remember at the time we had about $500,000 worth of clothing in our warehouse, and we had to make a decision by literally the next 10 days to place an order for the next season worth of goods. Again, this whole seasonality doesn't really make much sense even to me today, because Catch and Catch of the Day were built on a different premise where we always bought end of lines and clearance of proven products, proven brands and merchandisers, and our skill was buying them at a very low price and in return selling them to our consumers for a very low price. And I was the one that killed Pumpkin Patch. I remember it very clearly, and I just couldn't see us going to spend an extra $500,000 on the next season's worth of goods. The warehouse was full. The volumes sold were meaningless in comparisons to the volumes sold on Catch. The attention that business grabbed from so many other departments within that toolbox, it kept the customer service busier and the design team busier and the finance team busier and so on. And we just didn't see it growing to a meaningful point of actually moving that needle for a business as large as us. And we truly just turned it off, and no tears were shed during that week by anyone. It just meant that everyone had a bit more focus and time to concentrate on the bigger picture.
Yeah. I think it's something that, I personally have really struggled with is having that focus. I think entrepreneurs, as you mentioned, by nature will look for opportunities, and it's hard to resist those things. Again, for anyone who's potentially in that phase where they've got a number of different things that are sort of pulling them in multiple different directions, and it's having a detrimental impact on their core business. What are your recommendations in terms of how to approach that, or how to sort of realign where their focus should be?
I don't think I'm the right person to ask for it, because we've proven a few times that we just want to add more. A line that we mention in the book is, if you want something done, you need to ask a busy person. And I'll be honest with you, myself and my brother probably looking at 4 or 5 different opportunities right now, that all of them can happen or all of them may not happen. But they're all very interesting and they're all very exciting, and we can't put them into the not interested bin as yet. Talking about my brother, one of the things that really helped us throughout the years is having 2 founders that ran this business. So going back to the Scoopon launch, the first business that we launched vertically, my brother literally left the building of Catch and started building Scoopon from scratch in a whole new different building with a whole new different team. Once he finished that, he started working on building EatNow from scratch, just the same. So we talk at some stage in the book about the concept of running a business with a co-founder. And one of the lines that we use is, one thing that's for sure will happen is that you can achieve more when you have 1 or 2 or 3 other co-founders that you trust and they work just as hard as you. Because there is no way in the world that one co-founder could have built all these vertical businesses that we ran concurrently.
One of the things that I found absolutely fascinating about your book was hearing both your and Hezi, your brother's perspectives on the same sort of thing as well. And, it's something that you also mentioned in the book, but you are quite different in terms of your sort of skill sets and what you both bring to the table. One of the things about having co-founders is that you will never always see eye to eye on different things. And part of what I hear is that, both you and Hezi used to argue a lot through that process as well. Do you want to share a little bit in terms of what was that dynamic like, and how do you sort of work through those things where you don't necessarily see eye to eye with a co-founder or a stakeholder in the business?
Look, it was a lot harder in the early days. Today it's a lot easier. The reason that it's easier today is because both of us have realized who the other person is. So no matter what the topic is, today I know where my brother stands on that topic without even asking him. I know what's his view about marketing and advertising and social and everything else. And the same goes the other way. And that has basically got us to a position right now that we don't argue anymore. What also happens is that he knows where I'm good at and I know where he's good at. He has never done a podcast before and he's never will do a podcast. But I know that he's sitting at our office right now building our next business and he's working super hard at driving the team. One thing that really worked in our favor was that we are brothers and we always trusted each other when it comes to money, for example. We never argue about the point of I'm doing more than you or you doing more than me, a reason that many founders just can't get along with and don't see eye to eye. And I actually forgot what was your question, Rohit, but
just in terms of, I guess when you're working with a co-founder or a family member or a stakeholder in the business and you don't quite see eye to eye, how did you and Hezi work through that and I guess reach a conclusion?
So look, we argue a lot, and we mention in the book that sometimes one of us won and sometimes the other one won, and sometimes we will just keep on arguing forever. But we always believe in the point that if you have two founders, then it's much better if they have various opinions. If both of them think alike, then one of them is not really required. Vijay, that first employee of us, after a decade, he left us with the following line. He said this business would never have succeeded with two Gabbys or with two Hezis. And it's the first time I heard it was when he left, and I thought to myself, wow, this is such an amazing description, because it's so true. It's so true. And I know that this would not have succeeded with two Gabbys because I'm too optimistic, or with two Hezis, which is too pessimistic, and vice versa. You really need the yin and the yang, the two different elements. And by the way, we always ran it in a group, and of course Gabby and Hezi are known as the founders, but the best decisions are done when you put your best 8 people or 10 people or 15 people around the table and you listen to everyone. And we never believe that we are the smartest people in the room, nor should we be the smartest people in the room, especially not in our area of expertise. The smartest finance person should be the CFO, and the smartest marketing person should be the CMO, and the CEO should never be smarter than any of those in their respective, department.
Yeah, again, one of the things that's really evident is the culture and the people, just even the way that you spoke about and feature a lot of the people that worked for you and worked with Catch. It's no surprise that you had such an amazing culture that was built in. One other person that you mentioned a number of times in the book was Adam Schwab, who started off, I think you mentioned that you had sort of crossed hairs multiple times in terms of competing with multiple different businesses in multiple different markets. In the end, you ended up becoming partners in Luxury Escapes as well. And again, one of the things that I loved through your book was talking about making, your competitors, working closely with your competitors and being close to your quote unquote enemies. Again, do you want to talk us through what that process looked like from, I guess, competing with Adam to eventually becoming partner?
Yeah, so we first got introduced to Adam and his co-founder Jeremy Same in late 2010. We launched Scoopon, and they launched a company called deals.com.au. As a matter of fact, they actually launched it under the brand Zoopon, Zoupon, which was quite similar to Scoopon, so we probably sent them a legal letter to change their brand. But what we found is a couple of smart, hungry, hard-working guys. And when you do meet competitors like that, you have to give them a lot of respect. And I think the same thing could be said to Paul Greenberg and Michael Rosenbaum in the early days with Daily Deals, or to Ruslan and David Schaefer with Kogan. We see all these people regularly, and we talk about the concept of 1 + 1 = 3. Quite early on in our journey, we realized that you will achieve more by teaming up with your frenemies. And we've done that firstly with our food delivery business, when we merged EatNow with Menulog. And suddenly, the day after merging, we owned about 95% of the food delivery in the market. And what does it mean? You don't have to fight anymore for the next restaurant. You don't have to fight for the best employees. You don't have to fight for margins and so on. And when you team up and put all your strengths in the same bucket and you mix it, you'll definitely build a stronger business. And, we all know what happened with Menulog being sold for $855 million to EatNow from England. And we did exactly the same thing with Adam Schwab, where we merged our travel site called Bon Voyage with Luxury Escapes. And we also merged our daily deal sites, Scoopon on our side, and on their side was Deals and Kudo. I know we're talking about a lot of brands today, Rohit, and it would be quite confusing to a listener, but I'm sorry, we've done a lot of things in that decade. And today, myself and my brother are part owners of Luxury Escapes, a leading travel site online. I'm so happy that we are proud owners of that business. It'll have a massive 2021 after having a mediocre 2020 for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But it's a super strong business that I think could become a unicorn one day.
Well, one of the other stories that you mentioned, I think it would be really, I think it's a fascinating journey hearing about I think it was 80 million that you got in the end from Tiger Global Management and the Packer family and Andrew Bassett as well, from memory. I think even just the way that you kind of documented that journey of, you had obviously bootstrapped the company or sort of built it up yourselves over a very long time, and then you decided to, I guess, build some security for yourself and your family. What was that journey like in deciding to fundraise and also trying to find the right partners? Because as you mentioned in the book, you were being hunted and approached by everyone at that time.
So again, there was no plan there whatsoever. So in the book, we mentioned that when we launched this business, the only thing that we wanted to do was put food on a table. It was launched as a small business, and we ran it as a small business for a very long time. Just to take your listeners, we're talking about 2006. No one's been raising money in Australia. I don't think anyone was even using the word startup at the time. We were building a small business that turned into a medium business. But we suddenly found ourselves in 2010 reaching all those lists: fastest growing company, richest this, fastest that, growing that, smart company, BRW, etc. And as soon as we started hitting those lists, lots of VCs from all around the world started approaching us. I remember very clearly at the time, we're talking late 2010, we had one part-time accountant in the business. The business probably had about 40 employees and maybe 20 of them were in the warehouse. But in 2010, Rohit, I think our EBIT was about $10 million. We were making a lot of money. Just if you look at all the players today on the Australian Stock Exchange, most of them don't even make that kind of profit or even revenue that we had in 2010. And again, myself and my brother had to take all these calls that came from New York and London and Sydney, and lots of high net worth individuals around Melbourne wanted to take us for lunches and dinners. And everyone started putting a value on our business. And the first time someone valued it at $50 million. And the truth is we were interested, but we were too busy packing and shipping and driving. And our half part-time accountant didn't have the numbers that they were asking for. So we told them we'll talk to you in February 2011. And by February, someone else came in and valued us at 80. And a month later, someone threw the number of 120. It was just mind-boggling. And we're just thinking to ourselves, wow. So we didn't actually need any money. But the premise of possibly raising some money and upgrading my shitty car and moving to a nicer house was quite exciting. And, long story short, and we detail how that happened, one of the best VCs from around the world, a company called Tiger Global, ended up buying 40% of catch. It happened over a handshake without any presentation. We never had a deck. And we sold 40% of the business for $80 million. Most of the money came out of the business because the business was quite profitable and didn't really need any cash. And that was the end of chapter 1, I believe. And it ends with the following lines. The business was never the same again. And in fact, my life was never the same again post that transaction.
Really curious to know, and obviously mindful of time as well, but really curious to know when you talk about your life not being the same. You've obviously gone through end of last year, going through the transaction to Wesfarmers for catch. And obviously everything that's kind of happened this year, I've heard that potentially the business might have a different valuation this year potentially. How have you sort of, I guess, looking back in that kind of time period, how do you, what are your feelings, or how do you sort of think about that decision to sell at that time?
So we were very happy to sell the business. We were very happy with the price, and that was a fair price at the time. It wasn't cheap, it wasn't expensive. It was hard. I remember driving to work for the last time in August 2019, and I'm sitting at my car at my car park, and as I'm starting to reverse, I literally started crying. It was the end of a journey. It was a baby that I have to give away to someone else. I've raised that baby, and I think that we will forever be known as the founders of Catch. We sat at home for 5 months or so, having a bit of fun, and then Corona started. And when we sold the business in August 2019, 500 people reached out to me to congratulate us. Well done, what a transaction, enjoy retirement, great price, great exit, congratulations. Not a single person said that the price wasn't right. I remember when Corona started in March, I got quite a lot of phone calls from people. Do you remember the day that Afterpay reached $8 and everyone thought that the world is about to end? And many people have reached out to me and said, wow, Gabby, you're so smart. You sold the business on time. And I thought to myself, shit, man, luckily I don't have to worry about 500 families that Catch was taking care of. And we all know what happened over the next month. Retail has completely collapsed. E-commerce got an amazing boost. People have been referring to it as a 10-year growth over a 10-week period. So it is true, Rohit, the business that we have sold for $230 is probably worth $2.3 billion today, probably 10 or 12 times more than what we have sold it for. And congratulations to Wesfarmers for being there at the right place at the right time and going for it. Are we stupid? I don't know. Did we sell too early? Yes, we have sold it too early by 1 year, and that's the truth.
Well, no one can really predict what was to take place.
No one saw Corona coming, and neither did we.
So, final few questions from me, Gabby, before I finally let you go. One of the things that I think that will really stick with me from the book was you mentioned that you make your money from the price that you buy at, not the price that you sell. For you, and obviously, it kind of tailors towards kind of Catch, and I guess one of the things that you said that you have a gut feel around is, knowing potentially what will work. I'm really curious to know, what does a good deal look like for you? Either from a product perspective, something that you're looking to invest in. What are things that you're looking for that makes you feel like it's a right deal or the right catch?
I'll talk about the deal thing, because that's when we talk in the book about buyers. And yes, buyers are always wrong. They either buy too much or they buy too little. And one of the main reasons for Catch's success was us honing in on that problem of suppliers. And all suppliers had 1 or 2 or 3 things in the warehouse that they overbought, that they were unable to sell. And these were the items that our buyers, and which was myself in the early days, trying to find out as we walked through those warehouses. And yes, you make your money when you buy the goods, not when you sell the goods. What does that actually mean? If you buy it at a low enough price, the selling bit will be really easy. And that was the premise of Catch of the Day in the early days. We had to find only one deal a day, which is 7 deals a week, but they had to be freaking good deals. And Catch established an amazing reputation of being able to put an amazing deal every day at midday. That amazing deal may not be something that you specifically would be interested in, because from very early on we decided to appeal to everyone, to young and old, to male and female. So one day you'll find an electronic item, the next day it'll be a pillow, the next day it'll be a jewelry item, and the following day it would be Manchester. But we made sure that it's at the best price in the country, at the price that no one else could match. How did we do that? By negotiating really hard with the supplier. How do you negotiate really hard? In most cases, you need to buy everything that they have in the warehouse, and you need to pay them immediately or very soon after, and then you'll get those deals. When we talk about buyers in the book, we always refer to our buyers as product hunters. They were not buyers. Their job was to, build relationship with suppliers and not buy everything that they carried in stock, but buy only 1 or 2 or 3 of their SKUs that were special, unique, and really well priced.
Yeah, I mean, on that, like even the way that you, my next question was going to be, how do you negotiate an effective price? But even the way that you kind of spoke about that was very much around the supplier. And something that you kind of talk about in the book is, the business was built on Catch, your customers and your suppliers. Do you have any advice on that relationship building piece for founders? Again, whether it comes down to looking after their customers, looking after their investors and those sorts of things. What are things that they can do to help foster those deeper relationships?
Look, it's all about relationships. It's about building a relationship with the supplier. One line that again we use in the book is "Don't screw your suppliers." What does that mean? Make sure that every transaction has to be a win-win-win transaction. Catch of the Day, of course, has to win. Catch's customer has to win, but the supplier also has to win. If someone doesn't win from the transaction, most likely that supplier will never call you again. So it's about leaving some profit on the table for the supplier in order to be able to build that relationship. We mentioned in the book our best buyer, a gentleman called Adam Kraypot, and Adam's job was to build relationship with suppliers, mainly overseas, and buy large volumes of goods. And Adam spent 3 or 4 months of every single year in Las Vegas, New York, London, etc., building those relationships. And those relationships are most likely not being built in the office. They're being built at night when you go for dinner and you have a drink together, and later on that supplier will invite you to meet their wife and kids and you have a Friday night dinner together. But what does it mean? At the end, that supplier has a choice on who they want to sell the goods to. And they would much rather call Adam, because he's a really nice guy, than call that customer in Japan or wherever it is that they have never met before, maybe have spoken to on the phone. So it's very much about building relationships, because people like to do business with people that they like. And in that case, I think that we've built some tremendous relationships over the years.
Gabby, if I don't stop, I'm going to end up talking to you all day. So final 2 questions. One is submitted by a listener of the show. Nandini Maker wanted to know, what was the secret behind building the cult following behind Catch?
Price. I had dinner 2 days ago with Jack Gans, the owner of Chemist Warehouse. And I told him, Jack, you are my hero in a way, because Chemist Warehouse and JB Hi-Fi and Catch are proud discounters. We are not afraid to tell the whole world that our main premise and message is about price. And that was Catch. We're able to find great deals and transfer it to the consumers. Our best years of growth were the recession of 2008 and 2009, where consumers were looking for a savings and started discovering this thing called online shopping. and we were there at the right place at the right time, mind you, without much competition, because in 2008 and 2009, Chemist Warehouse or JB Hi-Fi or Myer or David Jones or Bunnings, none of them were there selling online, which allowed schmucks like us to be able to build a tremendous, what you just said as following or cult following.
And selfishly, final question for me: what are your views on Liverpool's chances of winning the Premier League this year? Given all the injuries.
Firstly, I hate this year because soccer needs to be played in front of a crowd, and the first few games of the season are being played crowdless. I told you earlier, I really struggle watching the game. But look, I think we've definitely turned the corner, and it feels like the next decade will be the decade of Liverpool, just like the previous one was the decade of, let's say, Barcelona. It's a good place to be to be a Liverpool supporter.
It's a great place to be, especially after 3 decades of kissing frogs. On that note, Gabby, once again, we've kind of spoken about this book multiple times, but this has been honestly one of my favorite reads this year. Absolutely fascinating insight. We've got a couple of copies that will be running a competition to give away to some of our listeners as well, so keep an eye out for that. Once again, Gabby, thank you so much for sharing your story on Catch and for coming on the show and sharing your story here as well.
Okay.
It's been amazing.
Let's do it again sometime, Rohit.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to episode 135 of the Startup Playbook podcast. As always, full show notes from this interview will be available at startupplaybook.co. I'll be back at 8 a.m. next Tuesday, the 8th of December, with another live episode. And my guest for episode 136 is Manuri Gunawardena, the founder and CEO of Health Match. I'm really excited about that interview and hope that you can join us. But in the meantime, if you enjoyed this interview, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. As always, thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next week.